There are moments in live television that were never meant to happen. Moments where the truth slips out before anyone can stop it. And on one painful night, Dean Martin, the man America believed they understood so well, walked onto a stage barely able to stand. What followed wasn't comedy, charm, or the relaxed confidence people expected from him. It was something raw, unguarded, and unlike anything he had ever shown the world. And it all began with a single drink he promised would be his last. The night everything fell apart. For decades, Dean Martin built a career on effortlessness. His charm felt natural, his humor unforced, and his image as the lightly buzzed crooner in a tuxedo became part of American pop culture. Most of the time, the drink in his hand wasn't alcohol at all, just apple juice, used as a harmless prop in a carefully crafted persona. But in the late 1980s, after the devastating loss of his son, Dean Paul Martin, in a 1987 Air National Guard crash, something inside him fractured. The man who once controlled every room he entered suddenly found himself struggling to control his own grief. The night of his infamous live TV appearance, Dean promised he would only have one drink before going on stage. He repeated it the way a man repeats something he desperately wants to believe. But when he stepped into the spotlight, it was clear nothing was under control. He swayed, his words drifted. His timing, once his greatest weapon, collapsed in his hands. Producers panicked off stage, urging a cut to commercial. But Dean refused. He insisted on staying, as if leaving the stage would mean admitting how far he had fallen. Someone asked him to share something the audience didn't know about him. For a moment, the room tightened. People expected a witty punchline, a playful jab, a throwaway comment. Instead, he said softly that his famous drunk act had always been an invention, a gimmick crafted decades earlier. The audience laughed at first, assuming it was another joke. But when Dean didn't smile, when he didn't follow with a punchline, the laughter died instantly. What came through wasn't humor, it was exhaustion and sorrow, and a man finally speaking without the shield of performance. It became one of the most heartbreaking moments ever aired on live television, and it marked the beginning of the public's realization that Dean Martin's pain ran deeper than anyone had imagined. A childhood built on hardness, not glamour. Long before Dean Martin became the king of cool, he was just Dino Paul Crocetti, a shy boy growing up in a cramped two-room apartment above a shoemaker's shop in Steubenville, Ohio. Born on June 7, 1917, he spent his early life surrounded not by music or glamour, but by the heavy weight of poverty. His parents, Gaetano and Angela, were Italian immigrants who worked relentlessly simply to keep a roof over their children's heads. Gaetano earned barely $18 a week as a barber, while Angela scrubbed floors and washed laundry for neighbors to avoid eviction. The building had no running water. The family shared an outdoor toilet with 3 other households. Every day was a struggle. Until age 5, Dino spoke only Italian. When he finally entered Grant Elementary, he was mocked for his accent, pushed around by classmates who saw him as different. His older brother Bill had to accompany him to school just to translate. But even with help, Dino never felt like he belonged. By 13, school seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. He dropped out after the 10th grade and promised his mother he would bring home real money. He meant it. He began delivering bootleg whiskey across the Ohio River at night for 50 cents a day. A dangerous job for a boy, but one of the few available in a Depression-era steel town. By age 14, he was collecting bets for local bookies, running numbers up and down the streets where steel workers gambled away entire paychecks. He shined shoes at the country club, pumped gas, stacked shelves, delivered newspapers before sunrise, and worked any job he could find. At 15, he lied about his age and took night shifts at the steel mill for barely more than $1 an hour. The noise, heat, and exhaustion were overwhelming, but Dino never complained. These years shaped him more than any movie role or hit song ever could. His famous motto, "Easy does it." wasn't born from laziness. It was born from surviving years of hard labor, poverty, and the feeling that life could crush a person if they didn't learn to stay calm. The cool exterior people later admired wasn't natural. It was armor, fists, scars, and the near-death moment that changed his path. By the time most teenagers were navigating awkward school dances or part-time jobs, Dino Crocetti was stepping into underground boxing rings under the name Kid Crochet. Between 1932 and 1936, he fought 36 matches and won most of them, but the victories came at a brutal cost. His nose was broken so badly it remained crooked for life. His knuckles shattered because he couldn't afford proper wraps. One hook split his lip permanently, leaving a scar that fans would later describe as part of his smile. But none of these wounds compared to what happened the night he almost died. In 1936, during a particularly violent match at the Steubenville Memorial Auditorium, Dino took a rabbit punch to the temple. He collapsed face first on the canvas and stopped breathing. The crowd fell silent. Doctors rushed in. For 5 agonizing minutes, he lay lifeless until they finally revived him. When he opened his eyes, he didn't know where he was. He didn't even know his own name. His memory slowly returned, but the damage was clear. He spent 3 days in the hospital vomiting blood and drifting in and out of consciousness. The doctor warned him plainly, one more blow like that could kill him. His family couldn't afford the $470 hospital bill. That fact, combined with the realization that boxing might take his life, pushed Dino to walk away from the ring for good. He needed a future that wouldn't end in a morgue. So he turned to the thing that had always been a quiet refuge, his voice. At 17, he began singing in small, smoky clubs around Steubenville. He wasn't a star yet. He wasn't even confident. He sang because it was the only path he hadn't already burned through. He modeled his style after Harry Mills of the Mills Brothers, adopting a smooth, relaxed tone that felt like the opposite of every punch he had ever taken. He earned tips, sometimes a meal, sometimes nothing at all. But the calmness it brought him became a kind of healing. And even then, life didn't straighten out. To survive, he dealt blackjack in back rooms and worked as a croupier at the Rex Cigar Store, an illegal casino run by the Scala crime family. Federal raids were common. Twice he escaped through alleys before agents stormed in. His world was a careful balance, half music, half danger. What no one knew then was that this mix, survival, charm, grit, and improvisation, would one day define Dean Martin's entire persona. The name change, the breakthrough, and the partnership that made history. By 1940, Dino's life changed with one unexpected offer. Sammy Watkins, a Cleveland band leader, heard him sing and offered him $200 a week, more money than Dino had ever imagined. But there was a condition. The name Dino Crocetti sounded too ethnic, too rough, too tied to a past America didn't yet understand. Watkins suggested a new identity, something simpler, smoother, more American. And just like that, Dean Martin was born. From 1940 to 1943, Dean toured ballrooms across the Midwest. He sang in hotel lounges, smoky clubs, whatever venues would take him. In 1941, he married Betty McDonald, and soon they had 4 children. But constant travel eroded the marriage, and by 1949, it ended in divorce. Meanwhile, Dean's life kept shifting. In 1943, he was drafted into the Army but discharged after 14 months for a hernia. While millions of young men were sent overseas, Dean returned home, performing in New York clubs and gradually rising within the entertainment world. He got his own radio program, Songs by Dean Martin, signed with Diamond Records, and although early recordings didn't explode on the charts, they gave him national exposure. A single twist of fate in 1946 would change everything forever. On July 25, 1946, at the 500 Club in Atlantic City, a scheduled act canceled last minute. Dean Martin and a young comedian named Jerry Lewis were told to fill the gap. What followed was pure chaos and brilliance. Dean sang smooth and calm. Jerry acted like a human explosion. The combination sent the audience into hysterics. Within days, their weekly salary climbed into the thousands. Within months, they were national sensations. From 1949 to 1956, Martin and Lewis became the most successful comedy duo in America. Their films, including My Friend Irma, The Stooge, and The Caddy, earned millions. Their live shows drew thousands of screaming fans. The Colgate Comedy Hour turned them into household names. Dean's hit, That's Amore, became one of the biggest songs of 1953, selling 2 million copies and earning his first gold record. Yet behind the laughs, cracks were forming. Jerry's style grew louder, more dominant. Dean, always seen as the straight man, felt overshadowed. In 1954, tensions peaked when a backstage argument erupted into a physical fight. Jerry punched Dean so hard he required stitches. Still, they performed the next night as if nothing had happened. By July 24, 1956, the partnership ended publicly. Their final film together, Hollywood or Bust, premiered later that year, marking the close of a decade-long chapter that transformed American comedy. Hollywood expected Dean to fade without Jerry, but Dean Martin was only getting started. Solo success, Hollywood stardom, and a career built on effortless control. When Dean Martin walked away from Jerry Lewis in 1956, critics predicted the end of his career. For 10 years, he had played the calm counterpart to Jerry's whirlwind antics, and many assumed he couldn't carry an act alone. But Dean had already set the foundation for his independence. The year before their breakup, he recorded Memories Are Made of This, a soft, relaxed single backed by the Easy Riders. It soared to #1 in January 1956 and stayed on top for 5 straight weeks, selling more than 3 million copies. That hit alone silenced the doubters. From there, Dean reinvented himself. Songs like Sway in 1954 and Inamorata in 1955 proved he didn't need comedic chaos. He needed only his voice, calm confidence, and a rhythm that felt like conversation rather than performance. By 1957, his album Dream with Dean sold more than 500,000 copies, securing his reputation as one of the smoothest singers of his era. Hollywood finally began taking him seriously. In 1959, Howard Hawks cast him as Dude, a broken and alcoholic deputy sheriff, in Rio Bravo. It forced Dean to strip away his cool persona and portray raw vulnerability. The performance earned praise from critics and is still regarded as one of his finest roles. That same year, he joined Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford in Ocean's 11, filmed at night in Las Vegas while the Rat Pack performed live shows during the day. Dean, unlike the others, always went home early, choosing rest, routine, and golf over all-night drinking sessions. In 1962, Sinatra invited Dean to join Reprise Records, offering full artistic freedom. Dean embraced it, releasing dozens of albums and cementing his signature sound. In August 1964, he shocked the world when Everybody Loves Somebody knocked the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night off the #1 spot. Even Frank joked that he was the only man alive who could stop Beatlemania. And yet, despite his success, trouble followed. In 1958, the IRS discovered hidden foreign royalties in Swiss accounts and fined Dean heavily. Instead of letting it tarnish his image, he turned it into business by launching Dino brand cigarettes in 1959, using the scandal to fuel his own marketing. By the mid-1960s, Dean was one of America's wealthiest entertainers. NBC paid him $34 million for a 3-year extension of the Dean Martin Show, giving him complete freedom, including the unusual clause that he never had to attend rehearsals. His on-screen, drunk act became legendary, though it was almost always apple juice in the glass. Yet for all the success, the pressure never left, and the years ahead would bring pain that not even Dean Martin could ease with charm, humor, or apple juice. The tragedy that broke him, and the night the world saw it. For decades, Dean Martin mastered the illusion of ease. Even as he entered his 50s and 60s, he kept working. Roasts, specials, albums, cameos, always with that same relaxed smile. But behind the scenes, his personal life was beginning to erode. His marriage to Jean Beager ended in 1973 after 24 years. His third marriage, to Kathryn Hahn, lasted only 3. His friendships grew distant. His body felt older than his age. But none of this compared to what happened on March 21, 1987, the day that changed him forever. That morning, Dean's son, Captain Dean Paul Dino Martin, took off from March Air Force Base in an F-4C Phantom jet. A sudden storm rolled in over Southern California. Radar showed the plane at 19,300 feet. Seconds later, it dropped sharply and slammed into Mount San Gorgonio at nearly 400 miles per hour. The wreckage wouldn't be found for 6 days. Dean, who had always kept his emotions locked behind charm and jokes, collapsed under the weight of the news. For years, people had assumed he was a heavy drinker, but most of the time, his glass had never held anything stronger than apple juice. After Dino's death, that changed. The act became reality. He stopped hiding behind the prop. He let the alcohol numb him because nothing else could. When Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. invited him on the 1988 Together Again reunion tour, Dean tried. He flew to Oakland, appeared before 5,500 fans, but lasted only a week. The lights, the applause, the old jokes, none of it mattered anymore. Publicly, they said Dean had fallen ill. Privately, they all knew the truth. He was grieving himself into silence. And then came the night of his heartbreaking live TV appearance. He walked on stage after promising he would only have one drink. But once the cameras rolled, he could barely stand. His words slurred, not like the comedic routine audiences adored, but like a man who no longer wanted to pretend. When a guest asked him to share something people didn't know, Dean whispered that his famous drunk act had always been just a gimmick. The room froze. For the first time, viewers weren't watching Dean Martin the entertainer, but Dean Martin, the grieving father. He refused to cut to commercial. He insisted on continuing even as producers begged, and the world watched, helpless, as the mask he had worn for half a century finally fell away. It was the moment America realized the truth. The man who had made millions laugh had been living with a pain even fame couldn't heal. Dean Martin spent his life making the world feel lighter, even when his own heart was weighed down by grief. His final years were quiet, private, and filled with memories only he truly understood. Which Dean Martin era do you remember most? His comedy with Jerry Lewis, his Rat Pack years, or his solo music career? Tell us below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support the channel.